We welcome you to another edition of Snap the Pigskin. We're going to break it down all today. We're going to get the show. Stefon Diggs tore ACL. What does that mean for Houston and the Texans long term? Trade deadline coming up here next week. The Colts benching Anthony Richardson for Joe Flacco. What does it mean for the Colts long term? What does it mean for these young quarterbacks? And a little bit of interesting stuff about the Detroit Lions. All we're going to talk about today. I'm Noah Clark. Kedrick is out today due to a personal matter, so he will be back hopefully with us on our next show. But week 9 is here, and let's get right into it. We're going to start with our drives of the week, starting with first down and Stefon Diggs and the Houston Texans. Stefon Diggs, one of the big trade acquisitions that the Houston Texans made this last year from the Buffalo Bills, comes into Houston, paired with Nico Collins, paired with Tank Dell, trying to help out a young quarterback in CJ Stroud. Then all of a sudden, tears his ACL. Not a good look for Houston long term. Not a good look for Stefon Diggs in his career as a Houston Texans long term. What does that mean for Houston? Well, for starters, let's talk about how Houston right now, still leading the AFC South, kind of in a bit of a dogfight right now with the Indianapolis Colts. They played Indianapolis this last week. They won against Indianapolis barely in the fourth quarter, but the tougher news about that is Stefon Diggs. And look, right now, Houston, they're a bit banged up. They don't have Stefon Diggs. They lose Stefon Diggs. They lose Nico Collins right now, who's still on IR. Tank Dell hasn't been as productive as a wide receiver. They're going to need to find some production somewhere. Now, they do have some production in other areas. The run game with Joe Mixon, I think that has been a huge boost for this team. Joe Mixon has been a very big boost for this rushing team and for a big boost for CJ Stroud because it's taken the pressure off of him. It's taken the pressure off of what they want to do as a team. Now, on the other side of that, with the Stefon Diggs part, Stefon Diggs, it's tough for him because they brought him in here from Buffalo to be that number one guy, to be that key piece, and to be that person that can take the edge off of the other wide receivers from Nico Collins, from Tank Dell. This has been kind of something that is huge. And it also was a sign that Houston has a chance for a Super Bowl, and their Super Bowl window has opened, and they want to take full advantage of it. Then they get Stefon Diggs. They didn't even have to trade up a first-round pick, which is really nice. You get Stefon Diggs. You don't have to trade up a lot of draft capital. And now all of a sudden, here he is coming into Houston. But it's tough on Stefon Diggs because, one, he was really a very productive receiver for the Houston Texans. And now Houston losing their second wide receiver in the last 4 weeks. It's not good. And it's not good for CJ Stroud and his development as a quarterback. 2, what is huge about this is, does he stay in Houston? Big thing to look at, and I saw a tweet about this with the Houston Texans, is Stefon Diggs. He does not have any guaranteed money, I believe, after this season with the Houston Texans. So if Houston wants to keep him, they're going to have to figure out how they're going to work that out. They're going to have to figure out a bunch of other things for this group. More importantly, what do you think? What do they think about Nico Collins? What do they think about, what do they think about Tank Dell? They're going to have to pay those 2 receivers as well. What do you think? CJ Stroud, long term, we're talking long term, but not a good look for Stefon Diggs. And this is a team that really kind of needs him. And really, as I've said before, kind of has their Super Bowl window open. Can they be able to capitalize on it without him? So far, we're seeing it work well for the Buffalo Bills. It's working well for Buffalo. They have been able to capitalize on this, and they've been able to improve the roster even without Stefon Diggs. I mean, you look at it, me and Kedrick had talked about this on this show. No, they had to gut everything. They had to gut everything just to get on, get over the cap, get under the cap. And yeah, that requires losing some of those wide receivers. They lose Stefon Diggs. They get rid of Gabe Davis. And now you're going to rely on guys like Khalil Shakir, Mac Hollins, Curtis Samuel, and Keon Coleman they drafted, which was still weird to me why they traded out of the first to get a guy like Keon Coleman. But the Bills somehow still did it. They're doing it. They're finding a way. And it really is impressive what they've been doing. And they've improved it by adding Amari Cooper. So what does this help for the Texans? Well, the trade deadline is coming up. Maybe you could make a couple moves here and there, and maybe you could make something happen for Houston, which brings us now to second down here on our show, and a great segue into number 2. The trade deadline is coming up for the Houston Texans, and not just only for Houston, but also for many other teams in the league. I will be honest, and I will say this about the trade deadline. This is one of the more uninteresting trade deadlines to watch. Everybody talks about, the NBA trade deadline as, it's incredible. The NHL trade deadline, Major League Baseball even has this as well as it being really incredible. But if we're being honest here, if we're looking at it, I mean, the NFL hasn't really been, in terms of it, a exciting trade deadline. We've seen the last couple of years, one or two trades have been made. We just don't see a fire sale. But now the optimistic side of me is like, well, okay, who are these players, that we could watch, that are on our trade, that are on the trade watch? To start, I'm going to go with the Raiders. And anybody on the Raiders, I think, that knows the Raiders, they're a fire sale. And it starts with one guy on that team, one player on that team, who I think deservedly would like to go to another spot. That guy is going to be Max Crosby. You look at with Max Crosby, he is in a tough situation for the Las Vegas Raiders. And the only reason I say that is because the Raiders right now have no shot of winning a Super Bowl, don't really have a team right now that's even competing. They don't have a quarterback. Their head coach right now isn't, in Antonio Pierce, not the best of coaches, but not certainly the worst of coaches, kind of an average mid-level coach. You look at their defense. This was one of the bright spots that I thought this defense would be huge. And it's been okay at some points, but the backbone of that defense is Max Crosby. And what's huge about this too is they just paid Christian Wilkins. They paid Christian Wilkins a ton. It hasn't been much production out of him. And the same thing with Max Crosby as well. You look at and the same thing you look at with Max Crosby too. Max Crosby has been on a very good tear so far this season. One of the few players that has been really surprising, or really not surprising, but really good and should be good, is Max Crosby. You look at it from Crosby this year, 6.5 sacks on the year. That's tied for 7th in the league. Really impressive stuff. 16 solo tackles. What's huge about Crosby is he's got an edge to him, man. He's got an edge to him that is very huge. You look at the last 3 seasons, he's never missed a game. Very reliable. One of the trade targets I think could be for any team. Now, the question is, what team would be interested in him? One team I think right off the bat that could be very interested in him, the Detroit Lions. I think there's been a lot of rumblings that Detroit could potentially look for a pass rusher because Aiden Hutchinson out for the year with out for the year with a leg injury. They could look to boost that. Here's an opportunity. Max Crosby comes in. Brad Holmes, I think, could finesse the Raiders into doing something crazy. And getting Max Crosby and trading for him to come to their roster and just make their team incredible. I think that could happen. I think that's a possibility. They need pass rush. This is a great spot for him to be able to improve. Another team that I will say as well, the Chicago Bears. They have a lot of cap space. Their defense could also use another pass rushers to pair with Montez Sweat. This would be a great fit as well. I think he would come to Chicago, would help that defense. Does it help their offense, though? That is the big concern. It doesn't really, when you look at it. I mean, a defensive pass rusher is not going to help you get those much-needed points that you would need to win games. It's just not going to happen for this offense. And we all saw what happened last week and what happened last weekend with the Bears and the Commanders. And we saw how that game ended and how the Bears absolutely blew it at the end. But I think this would be a good move. I think this would be something that, maybe the Bears, play around with. Maybe they take a look at, and they take a chance on Max Crosby. Now, a lot of people say, the ownership is still, they're kind of like, we're not going to trade him. Mark Davis isn't going to, Mark Davis said, it's not going to happen. But let me put it this way. Davante Adams wanted out of the Raiders. And it was because the team was sucking. They were losing. They were not doing well. They were struggling. And he only wanted to play there because of Derek Carr. Well, Derek Carr, after like one season, was gone. Excuse me. Was gone. And you can't replace that. You can't. Like, that's a tough. It's Davante Adams is one of the top 5 wide receivers in the league. But he was not happy. He was disgruntled. Same thing with Max Crosby. There comes a point where, Max Crosby, he says all these things. Does he mean it, though? Is he frustrated? Because, I understand. You're playing in the division with the Chiefs and the Chargers. You're not really going to get better. And the Raiders, they just have not been a consistent winner. And so if you want to be on a consistent win, if you want to be on a team that's terrible, hey, go ahead. But if you want to be a consistent winner, maybe ask for trade. Those are the other 2 teams that I think could be asking for a trade. Anybody, literally, I will say this, the next person I will say, literally anybody from the Carolina Panthers. I talk about this with Carolina. I know that, their owner has said, I know Dave Tepper has said stuff, and Scott Fitterer has said stuff that they're not going to trade anybody, but they just traded Deontay Johnson away, and they traded him to the Ravens for practically nothing, which they could have got some draft capital, some valuable draft capital back for him as well. And here's where I look at this Panthers team. They're not going to be good this year. We've said it. It's already been set in stone. They're not going to be a good team this year. They're not going to be, relevant maybe for the next 2 or 3 years with the way that this roster is been constructed and built. They've been so bad, and their front office has been terrible at making decisions. Their owner won't stay the hell away from the team and wants to be hands-on with the team. And it's just a mess. And with that, I think the Panthers should be selling. Sell. They should be big sellers on this trade deadline. Get rid of J.C. Horn. Get him, get J.C. Horn to a different team. Get Derek Brown. Maybe you could trade Derek Brown. Even though he hurt, he's out for the season, maybe you could trade him. Trade Bryce Young potentially even. Maybe there's a chance you could trade some of these people. The Panthers right now are not in a good spot where they can be a winner. And that is pretty obvious. They need to get rid of people to try and build that draft capital up and build through the draft. And this is one of those, it's one of those things. You got to clean house. At some point, you got to clean house. If you're Dave Tepper, you just got to say, we got to get a new GM. Maybe we get a new head coach. And I think also, too, from Dave Tepper, he needs to stay away from his team. They are not good when he is there putting his hands on the team and trying to make things work. It doesn't work. I think that I think that they need to sell. Now, the owner has said that there's not going to be a fire sale. I don't believe that whatsoever. I think they need to get rid of everybody. I think they need to start looking at their options and looking at, okay, what do we need to do? What do we need to do to make this team successful? Well, for starters, you have so many good players on this team. You have a few good players on this team that you have to start looking and you have to say, okay, what can we get back from them? And JC Horn obviously is the big one to me. I think if they were to find some draft capital for JC Horn, it would be a first-round pick. He's a top, he's a rising corner in this league. He's going to be stuck in Carolina for however many years. You just got to get rid of him. Got to get rid of him. Got to find something got to find some sucker is what I am saying, to get rid of him and to try and move on from him as well. Any rookie quarterbacks, any quarterbacks that are not rookie quarterbacks, any second, third year quarterbacks. I think obviously the only one is Bryce Young. That's the big one. I think Bryce Young could potentially go somewhere. That's just in my honest opinion. I think that he's in a tough situation. No matter who the head coach is or who the general manager is, he's not going to succeed. And the team's going to get worse and worse and worse. So I would consider trading him. I would consider that. The Green Bay Packers, I'm going to throw this out here as well. Malik Willis. Do they consider trading Malik Willis? Maybe they could get some draft capital back for him. I doubt it. There isn't really a team out there, too, by the way, that isn't really looking for a quarterback to kind of improve this roster. A lot of these teams right now are set at quarterback. If there were a team out there that could use a quarterback, I think it might be the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns or the Las Vegas Raiders, their quarterback situation is dire and desperate. They do not have a quarterback to run that organization, and they need one. And the tough thing about it is, let's say you move Bryce Young. Okay, hypothetically, you move Bryce Young. You move him into a situation where, let's say Cleveland. Okay, they got Kevin Stefanski. They're going to be a decent team, I think, without Deshaun Watson. But I also think, too, if they're trying to look for the future, you could develop Bryce Young as well, which there's a lot of stuff on that. But those are a couple teams. There's a couple players that I think could be on the trade deadline. It's tough because every year when the trade deadline hits, all these players, all these teams that say they're going to, make a trade usually do not end up making a trade. It just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen whatsoever. So, yeah. But, hey, trade deadline coming up. Third down. I kind of got ranting on that a bit. Third down. We talk about the Indianapolis Colts here down in Naptown. Indianapolis making a big move, big change at quarterback. Benching Anthony Richardson for Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco, last year, phenomenal quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. Got them to the postseason. What does it say for young quarterbacks? Does not look good for Anthony Richardson. The NFL, I've seen this a lot today. I saw this a lot on Twitter the past couple days. Even as we're recording, I've seen this. Even as we're recording, I've seen this. I've heard this from people. The NFL has a quarterback problem, and it's pretty obvious. I mean, they do have a quarterback problem. But let's talk about Joe Flacco for a sec here, because Joe Flacco's been in a lot of good situations. Been on a lot of teams the past few years. But Joe Flacco, man, when I talk about Joe Flacco, I talk about his tenure with the Baltimore Ravens, and he was the guy that got replaced by Lamar Jackson. And you look at Joe Flacco's career from 2008 to 2018. He was quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens, and then had 3 years with the New York Jets. And this last year with the Cleveland Browns, he was electric with the Cleveland Browns. Got the Browns to the playoffs in the 5 games he played for Cleveland. And in those 5 games he played for Cleveland, he had 204 passing attempts, 123 completions, which led to a completion percentage of 60.3. He had 1,616 passing yards, averaging 7.9 yards per attempt. So he's almost averaging 8 yards per attempt, close to that. And 13 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. His first down percentage was 29.4%. And what makes this even bigger, is in the 5 games, he had 27 plays of 27 throws of 20 plus yards or more. And his passer rating his QBR rating, was 90.2. The Indianapolis Colts said in a press conference earlier this week with Shane Steichen that they are going to roll with Joe Flacco here for the foreseeable future. What does that mean for Anthony Richardson? Doesn't look good for Anthony Richardson. I mean, it doesn't look good for him on what happened last Sunday. He took himself out of a game in the third quarter with a 1-score, 2-score game left to, 1-score game, a 10-point game, a 7-point game, whatever it was. He took himself out of the game. And that is a bad look as a starting quarterback for the National Football League and for the team that drafted you. I mean, Anthony Richardson, what are we doing here, man? You had a RAS score of 10, but you can't stay in for, all 4 quarters, and he's completely fine. And he decides, I got to take myself out. Third quarter, I'm too tired. I got to take myself out for a breather. It's one of those rare times where I look and I say, this cat should not be playing in the NFL. He should not be an NFL quarterback. He should not be in the league, because truly he does not think about the team. He thinks about himself. And this is a prime example of that. And man, it's tough. It's tough. I feel for Anthony Richardson too on that other side of it. He's a young kid. He's got a lot of growing up to do. And this is one of those prime examples where you have to grow up and you have to learn that, hey, it's the NFL. It's a different animal. You gotta grow up. You gotta be that leader for the team. And the players, if they see you coming out in the third quarter in a close game like that, it's not good. Not a good look, brother. Not a good look. Now, for Joe Flacco, hey, this is a great opportunity for Joe Flacco once again. You look at it, Joe Flacco so far, he's played in 3 games this year. Already played in 3 games this year, and that's only because Anthony Richardson's been banged up for the Indianapolis Colts. And in the 3 games he has played, 108 passing attempts. He's thrown the ball 108 times, completed 71 passes with a 65.7 completion percentage, 706 passing yards, averaging 6.6 yards per carry. So almost 6.5 yards per pass attempt for Mr. Joe Flacco. And so far in the 3 games, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception. And his QBR, 102.2. That is pretty dang good. That is pretty dang good for Joe Flacco. And mind you, he's been playing this league. He's been playing in the league for a very long time right now. He's been playing in the league for a very long time. He's in his 18th year in the National Football League. This brother knows what it takes to win. And what's crazier too, I mean, he took the freaking Browns to the playoffs and he got Kevin Stefanski Coach of the Year. So he can do it. He can do it. They have the weapons. They have the running game. They have the offensive line. The defense, it's suspect. It's a little bit suspect, but like, come on. Let's go. Let's ride the Joe Flacco train. Let's go run it back again for part 2 of this. And here we go, Indianapolis. This is going to be a big game for the Colts. Indianapolis this Sunday, they've got a big test. They got the Minnesota Vikings. If Joe Flacco wins this game on Sunday, man, like the Joe Flacco hype train it's getting ready, it's getting going, so let's buckle up for that. So I love it. I love Joe Flacco, man. I love Joe Flacco. He balls. He balls out. He goes hard, and he's phenomenal. Now, the bad part about this, here's the bad part about this for Anthony Richardson. What does this do for Anthony Richardson? And we'll say, circling back to that. Anthony Richardson, I think he still has a bright future after what I said, before, and said, it's a selfish moment. And I said he needs to grow. He does need to grow. This is a growing moment for him where, in a 7-point game, you can't take yourself out. You can't take yourself out. Especially in the third quarter, 7-point game, you just can't take yourself out. Against a division rival nonetheless. He's got to learn. And what I even say about this for Anthony Richardson is he has been terrible coming in since coming to Indianapolis. He has not looked the part of a starting quarterback. He has not played the part of a starting quarterback. That could be just due to the fact that it's up to coaching and it's up to them to make him succeed. And the reason why I say this is a quarterback problem overall is because Anthony Richardson is a rookie, and the way he's playing right now is a rookie. And the reason I say this, let me just tell you what his stats were. So his first year, he didn't finish the season, but he played in 4 games, he threw 84 pass attempts for 50 completions, 59.5 completion percentage on the year, 577 yards. He had 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Along with that, too, he had 4 carries for 25 yards. In 4 games, he had 25 carries for 136 yards, 5.4 yards, and 4 rushing touchdowns. So you look at that, he's running more than he's throwing. And that's what he was asked to do a lot at the University of Florida. Now, let's look at this year, okay? He had a shoulder injury last year. He didn't even finish the season last year. And they somehow still were in contention. They almost made it to the freaking playoffs with Gardner Minshew. So now let's look at this year. Okay, no Gardner Minshew. No Gardner Minshew this year. We're going to have Joe Flacco. No worries, Anthony. It's your team. It's your ball club. And now so far in year 2 for passing, in the 6 games he's played, 59, he's had 133 pass attempts, 59 have been completed, completion percentage of 44.4%. He's had 958 yards. He's almost over 1,000 yards passing. First time in his career, he's had that. 7.2 yards average, but he's had 4 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. So the touchdowns and interceptions have been worse. And his QBR rating in his first year, 45.8. This year, 38.4. That is not good. And just to even look at the last game, and you look at the Texans game, he was brutal. His passer rating, his QBR was 30.3. That's on his his season average this year. And he was 10 for 32 with 175 yards, averaging 5.5 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. And man, he took 5 sacks. And they lost the game by 3. Anthony Richardson does not look like a starting quarterback. He just simply doesn't. He doesn't look like a starting quarterback in this league. He doesn't look like he's comfortable, and he doesn't look like he's ready to go. And frankly, I think the NFL has a quarterback problem. This has been recent of years. We've only seen this rarely happen where quarterbacks in their first year come out and immediately ball, immediately go out and play well and flourish. We've seen it with CJ Stroud. We potentially are seeing it with Caleb Williams. Who knows? I mean, he's with the Bears. You never really know that. It's a very rare instance where these rookie quarterbacks will go out and play well. And some rookie quarterbacks are put in tougher situations, and it's due to coaching. And I'm going to pull up a tweet here. And the reason I say this is because I'm going to look at a tweet. I'm going to pull up a tweet here. This is from Sam Block of the Block Spot on Twitter. The app formerly known as Twitter and X. Anthony Richardson, 22 years old, benched. Bryce Young, 23 years old, benched. Trey Lance, 24, benched. Justin Fields, 25, bench. Will Levis, 25, benched. Zach Wilson, 25, benched. Mac Jones, 26, benched. And Kenny Pickett, 26 years old, benched. All these quarterbacks that I just named, and that this young fellow Sam Block is just named, all were first-round quarterbacks. All were picked in the top 10, top 15. Except for Will Levis. Will Levis was picked in the second round. But all these quarterbacks, besides Will Levis, were day one, and they were in the top 10, top 15. And they're all benched. The NFL has a problem. It's a quarterback problem. And I said this yesterday in the student section. Yeah, some of it is on the quarterback. Some of it I also think has to do with the coaching. And let me just put it this way for other quarterbacks who have had success by sitting. And I think sitting, this is the reason why quarterbacks should be benched, should be shelved for many, many years, just to learn, grow, get accustomed to the game. Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers sat for 3 years. Patrick Mahomes sat for a year, learned behind Alex Smith. Jordan Love sat behind Aaron Rodgers. Tom Brady sat for 2 years. Kirk Cousins sat for 3 or 4 years. Phillip Rivers sat for multiple years. Set them up with a good situation. Set them up with great coaching. Set them up to learn so they can develop, and they might have success. The other thing is, too, coaching matters in this league. And this is another thing that I think why the NFL has a quarterback problem. It's because, man, the coaching right now isn't up to standards as what it was back in recent years. You look at it with the Panthers, and the Panthers really have had this issue before. They had Baker Mayfield, they had Sam Darnold, they've had Bryce Young. None of those quarterbacks have worked. But you look at the last 2 quarterbacks, they have gone on to better situations where the coaching has been better. They went from Baker Mayfield, went from Sean McVay to Todd Bowles. And yeah, I did bash Todd Bowles, but Todd Bowles is a good coach. And he's learned. And now he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, potentially an MVP candidate. Same thing. Sam Darnold. This is a prime example. Sam Darnold had been on 2, not 1, but 2 bad teams with the Jets and the Panthers. Had bad coaching in both of them. Had Adam Gase, had Matt Rule as his coaches. Terrible, terrible, terrible situation. And you know what happened after that? Went with Kyle Shanahan. went with Kevin O'Connell, and now has revitalized his career. Coaching matters, people. Coaching matters. Sitting your quarterbacks matter. The NFL right now has a quarterback problem, and it's glaring, and Anthony Richardson is another one that is on this list. So I talked a lot about that. Fourth down here on this one. Man, I went on for a long time. Fourth down on this one. Talk about the Detroit Lions. And I looked at an interesting stat up about the Detroit Lions. And one thing I had about Detroit is they are eerily similar to one of these teams that has been a Super Bowl favorite that Dan Campbell, I think, was a player on, the 2009 Saints. Why do I say that they're similar to the 2009 Saints? Let's look at the 2009 Saints season. In 2009, the New Orleans Saints won the Super Bowl. They finished the year 13-3. They lost their last 3 games of the year, but they went on to win the Super Bowl. And not only did they win it, they dominated the Super Bowl. What's huge about the New Orleans Saints? They finished the year with the number 1 ranked offense. This is on Pro Football Reference. They finished the league. They finished the year with the number 1 offense in points for and the number 1 offense in yards. They were one of the best teams in points yards. You look at it also, too. What is huge? The average drive time. And this is a stat that I think I found very interesting from Pro Football Reference. And this may be a reach, but just a little bit of something. Take this with a grain of salt. The average time. So the average, time of play is 244 for the Saints. The Saints had drives of 244. They averaged almost 5-6 plays a drive, 39.4 yards, and they averaged over 2.44 points. So they were just monstrous on drives. They were phenomenal on drives. Now let's look at the Detroit Lions so far this season. The Detroit Lions, similar numbers. 241, averaging 5.5 plays per drive, with almost 33.7 yards and 202.86 points. Similar to the 2009 Saints. Take it with a grain of salt, but I'm saying that they have been really a dominant team so far. The Lions have really not missed a beat. You also look at the schedule so far for the Detroit Lions as well. Detroit absolutely has crushed teams this year. They have absolutely crushed teams. They beat the Rams in overtime. It was a slow start. They beat the Rams in overtime. Then they lose to the Bucs. But then they throttled the Cardinals. They throttled the Seahawks. They throttled the Cowboys. They throttled the Vikings. I shouldn't say they throttled the Vikings. But you look at the Lions so far this season. Let's just look at their schedule. They got 26. They got 26, 16, 20, and then their last 4 straight games. So far, their last 4 straight games. They had 42, 47, 31, 52. When I look at the New Orleans Saints and I look at their schedule, the New Orleans Saints started the season out 45, 48, 27, 24, 48, and 46. And this is all in the first 2 months of the season. This team is eerily similar to the 2009 Saints. I'm just saying, they have started out really well. If it wasn't for that Tampa Bay loss, this team might be up there with some of the greatest teams in NFL history. And this is one of the prime examples of a team that could potentially win the Super Bowl. And the other thing about the Detroit Lions, this could be their first. New Orleans, it was their first in 2009, and they were celebrating so well for that. So that was a thought that I put out there as well. Now, moving on to bringing home the bacon. That is one of our drives of the week as well. Bringing home the bacon. We start with last week. It's good picks for us. Bringing home the bacon this week, we got Josh Jacobs from the Green Bay Packers. 25 carries for 127 yards and 2 touchdowns in a win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. I was told by multiple people, I've heard this on Twitter, I've heard this so much before, that people were saying that Josh Jacobs was a terrible free agent signing. And I think they're very much wrong on that. He wins the slab of bacon this week, and congrats to Josh Jacobs. He gets on our list. He gets on the slab of bacon. Very happy for him as well as many others. So great job for Josh Jacobs. You are on the slab of bacon. And now we're going to get into our pigskin picks as we're getting close to wrapping up the show. 20 minutes left in our show as well on another episode of Snap Pigskin. Kedrick out today, so he did give me his picks. He did so elegantly give me his picks. I got to pull him up as well. He's doing Badger basketball tonight, which is really fun. But and I will say that as well. I mean, like it. I also said it was a personal matter, so sorry, Kedrick, to call you out there. But anyways, we're gonna do our picks, and by we, I mean me and my wonderful girlfriend Teighan. Hi, Baba. How's it going, Baba?
Hi, Baba. I'm a little nervous, Baba.
You're a little nervous? It's okay.
Yes.
It's okay. It's really simple. Simple. So just to even tell you, and I told her this before we started, before we started this, which was a couple days ago, so here's how it goes. Here's how it goes for our picks. So I give you a pick. You have to predict who wins and by how much. So far right now, Kedrick, I believe, is the leader. In terms of guests right now, Sam is in last and Chrissy is in first. So your bar right now is getting past Sam, because Sam had a tough one. So you ready to do this, Baba?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, let's get it going. All right, let's start with our first primetime picks, and another New York-based team. And I hate this so much. I'm getting sick and tired of watching these New York-based teams. We had the Giants last week on Sunday Night Football. We had the Jets a couple weeks ago on Sunday Night Football. I'm getting tired. I want to burn my eyes every time I watch this team. Texans and Jets. Kedrick immediately said Jets lose by 1 billion. But then he texted me his real pick, and he said Texans by 14. He's got Houston winning this one, which is very funny because the Jets are favored by 3.5 to beat the Houston Texans. I think that's probably because Stefon Diggs is hurt. So who knows? But I'm going to go with the Houston Texans. I think Houston's going to win by 10 in this game. I think the defense for the Jets, they keep it close, but Houston eventually prevails at the end. I got Texans by 14. And so, Baba, who do you got for your pick here for Texans and Jets?
Based on my very brief Google search, I'm gonna choose the Texans by 6 points.
Yay, let's go. Texans by 6. All right. Next one, being as how you're from Minnesota, and she grew up from Minnesota. Teighan grows up from Minnesota, so she's in Vikings country. Colts and the Vikings, Sunday Night Football. This is kind of funny because me and Teighan joke off air about this. Is Joe Flacco, the GOAT, Joe Flacco, Baba. He is starting this week against the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday Night Football in Minnesota, and this should be a very interesting game. Joe Flacco, he's done pretty well this season. The numbers show it from what he's done in his 3 games with the Indianapolis Colts. Kedrick right now has the Vikings by 7. He's taking Minnesota to win this one. The last time, too, crazy thing, last time Colts played the Vikings in US Bank Stadium, Minnesota completed the largest comeback in NFL history on Christmas, Christmas or Thanksgiving. It was one of the holidays, but they created they set the record for the largest comeback in NFL history against the Indianapolis Colts. So he's got Vikings by 7. I am actually gonna go here with I'm gonna go with, in kind of a shocker, Vikings by 3 in this game. I think Minnesota gets off the schneid. I think they've lost 2 straight. They're going to get back on the win column. This is a good get right game for them. Colts defense has been really bad this season. They haven't been really that all worldly, and US Bank's a different breed. I got Vikings winning this one by 3. Who you got in this one, Bubba? Who we picking? I'm obviously, I feel like it's the Vikings. I feel like it's pretty obvious.
Yes, I'm going to pick the Vikings. I'm just going to clarify, I'm not a Vikings fan, but I might have to be because someone keeps shoving it in my face. But I'm going to choose the Vikings to win by 5.
Vikings by 5. Ooh, that's a good pick. That's a good pick. Last one here. Bucks and the Chiefs. Monday Night Football game. This is probably going to be the best primetime game of the entire weekend, of the entire primetime slate. Last week, we were treated with last week or 2 weeks ago, we were treated with another Bucks matchup, Bucks and the Ravens. Ravens dominated the Tampa Bay Bucks throughout. This time the Bucks go on the road and they go to Arrowhead to play Patrick Mahomes, the only undefeated team left in the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs. Baker Mayfield already has beat one team that was undefeated, the Detroit Lions, early on in the season, won a very early contest at Ford Field. Now he has to go to Arrowhead, and it is not a very, very friendly environment for any team that comes to Arrowhead. And Kedrick, starting this one off, Kedrick has the Chiefs by 14. Chiefs by 14, double digits against the Tampa Bay Bucks. This one is very interesting. I think I'm going to go with the Bucks on this one. I'm going to be on the other side of it. I think Tampa Bay, I think they could pull off a potential upset. I don't think the Chiefs have played that well. Their defense has kept them in a lot of games this season, and they know how to win these close games. But I think this is one where the Bucks I get an opportunity and potentially steal another huge win on the road this year. Talk about one win at Detroit, 2 wins where you win at Detroit and you win at Arrowhead. Those are 2 tough tasks. I got Bucks winning this one by 4 against the Mahomes-led Chiefs. Who you got in this one, Bubba? Who we got? Chiefs or Bucks? This is a big pick here. No pressure at all. No pressure.
I think you made a very bold choice. But
bold.
Yeah, since the refs seem to really be on the Chiefs side this year.
Yes.
So good luck to you on that, but I will be choosing the Chiefs.
Chiefs?
I'm going to say they're going to win by 17.
The Chiefs by 17. 17?
Yes, 17.
Holy cow! So you and Kedrick are both on the spot of double digits here. Interesting. So, and Kedrick, looking at his text he sent me, he's got 2 teams today, not today, or 2 teams on this week winning by double digits. Holy cow! Okay, okay, that was very fun. But it's hey, that's Pigskin Picks for you, Baba. How did that feel? Did that feel good? Feel comfy? How we feeling?
I feel unsure since I do not watch football like you do.
Yes.
So, but it was fun.
It was fun?
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. It was very, very fun. Before we wrap up, because we're gonna actually wrap up the show a little bit early today. You want to tell the fine folks where you can where they can find you as well? Because I know you just started a podcast, just recently. And you had your first episode dropped, which you can find that on YouTube and Instagram. You want to tell the fine folks what it's called and where they can find you?
Yes. So if you guys ever get bored of listening to Noah and Kedrick talk about sports
Which they
all
might.
the time. Yeah. And you want to change your life and spice it up a little bit, you can listen to me and my sisters gossip about our lives and different things on our podcast called We Shouldn't Be Talking About This.
Nice. When do episodes drop? When do the episodes drop usually?
Episodes drop on Saturday.
Nice. And I listened to the first episode. It was really good. They talked a little bit about Starbucks coffee. There was January being mentioned, unicorn frappuccinos being mentioned. So that's always fun. And you can also listen to Kedrick's show, the Scotty Six Pack. He does some great work over there. He's actually probably doing some work for Badgerman Sports today. So feel free to listen to his podcast. He always drops every episodes on the Scotty Six Pack, where you can find him at YouTube and et cetera, et cetera. And you can also find us, Snap the Pigskin, as well. Where can you find us? YouTube at www.youtube.com/@snapthepigskin, or listen wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen to us on YouTube, on Spotify, on Amazon Music, on iHeartMusic. You can't listen to us on Google anymore, but you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts. You can listen to us anywhere you go or wherever you get your podcasts. And with that does it for us. Baba, thank you for coming on and helping us with our picks today. And Kedrick, we hope Kedrick comes back, and hopefully he'll be back on. Trade deadline is next week, so hopefully we'll be talking trade deadline stuff. But this has been another edition of